Hey guys, Greg here. I wanted to give you a behind the scenes of how I made Tokyo by Bike. And I got my notes right over here. So let's start out. So I decided I wanted to go on a bike ride all throughout Tokyo. The original idea was kind of to go around the whole perimeter. And the reason for that was because of coronavirus. I didn't want to interact with people too much. So I know there's a lot of greenways in Tokyo around the riverbanks. So I thought I can just go around the riverbanks and make my whole way around. Although the riverbanks actually don't quite go all the way around Tokyo like I would want them to, not in a big huge circle. So I kind of had to modify that idea. I guess with the coronavirus, I just wanted something that was relaxing as well. I know I just made a video, the timeline of coronavirus, and it was pretty intense. But after a while, I just wanted to forget about everything. So, but I had to wait until the lockdown or it wasn't a lockdown, but the state of emergency was over in Tokyo before I proceeded on the bike ride. And also, once more science came into play, and like facts came back that being outdoors was a relatively safe thing to do, especially if you're on a bike, which kind of makes you physically distant from people because you can't get too close to people when you're on a bike. And if you're wearing a mask, if you happen to need to be close to people, it seemed like a fairly safe thing that I was able to film again. But I was going to do it before the lockdown, but it just didn't seem quite safe enough at the time. So I waited, I don't know, 2 or 3 months. I don't even know anymore how long everything was until I filmed it. So what I wanted to show was really the diversity of the city. It's there's so much stuff that you don't see in tourist videos, places that would be recommended to you, and things that I get to see when I'm just naturally biking around from point A to point B. So I want to show you that, and I want to show you the bike setup. I want to show you how I created my plan for my route, what my route actually ended up being. Yeah. I want to say it's also very convenient biking because you have a lot more greenways than you might expect in Tokyo, and there are a lot of little parks virtually everywhere around Tokyo. But especially if you go on the greenways, then they always have bathrooms and they always have clean water. So it's ideal. Like every, I don't know, kilometer or 2 or 3 or something like that, you have a easy place to take a break. So it's nice. And if you ever want food and stuff or other drinks besides water in Tokyo, I mean, there's all the vending machines and convenience stores. So you could easily go to those places. Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about the trip, and I'm just going to pull up a map over here, although I guess I can show it on my other screen. I'm screen capturing this as well, so you can see it there. So what I was surprised about with the trip was that in the busy city center areas, I thought a lot of them would be a lot harder to ride through than it actually was. Shibuya was definitely difficult to ride through because they were having construction, but if you take away that aspect of it, it actually wasn't that bad. Shinjuku definitely was not so bad at all to ride through. So that surprised me because I was expecting a lot worse. The worst roads, I would say, are the major ones that have a lot of traffic going through for Tokyo is relatively high speeds, like 50, 60 kilometers an hour, which is, I think it was like between 30 to 40 miles per hour. So riding on the street with that type of traffic, that would make me nervous a bit. Especially since depending on which road section you are, they might kind of get narrow, like the between the curb and the cars, that distance might not always be there. There's not always a dedicated bike lane there. But on a lot of those major roads, there sometimes is dedicated path on the sidewalk for cyclists, or they have some markers on the road. So it really, really, really depends on the road you're going. And unless you're using Google Street View in advance, you won't know until you get there and see. And the roads change up so much, so it's a really a mixed bag of things when you're riding around the streets of Tokyo. The other bad streets I would say are maybe it's the streets that don't have any actual sidewalk at all. They're so narrow that they don't have proper sidewalks and everyone's sharing the roads, but maybe lots of cars are going through. So they might be going through at 30, 40 kilometers an hour, which isn't crazy fast, but just the tight spaces. So they don't make for a relaxing ride. Yeah. The big thing I was worried about with the trip was that it's 100. I planned it out as around 110 kilometers is what I put on the route plan. And I thought, oh, okay, so if it's 110, I usually take detours or get lost or do things like that. So it's probably going to be a little bit more. And the route ended up being 120 kilometers. So I would guess I was right that it did take a little bit farther than I planned it to be. But I had done test runs a few times going 30, 40, and 50 kilometers routes. And after those test rides, my legs were quite tired right at the end of it. And so I was quite worried. I was like, wow, if I'm getting tired after like 40 or 50 kilometers, how can I do 100 plus kilometers in a day? So I was very, very conscious of that when I was riding at the start. And I thought it's just slow and steady will get me to the finish line, which ended up being true. So in actuality, what I think happened was that in my practice runs, I was mainly going for more like, not really speed. I wasn't going that fast. My practice runs were maybe 15 kilometers an hour or 17 kilometers an hour. I kind of remember those rates of speed on average. And even though I stopped a little bit here and there, I still kept it up. So sometimes I guess I'd be riding around 20 kilometers an hour, which for cyclists isn't that high of a pace at all. But, I'm not a cyclist, and I'm using a Mamachari, which is a city bike. But anyways, I was just riding at a faster pace than what I would end up riding on the actual day. So on the actual day, I would have to film. So I'd have this camera, and this is actually what I was filming with. I'll talk about this a little bit more because I want to talk about it a bit. But I had this camera in one hand and then my hand on the handlebar. And I would film for a little bit and then I'd collapse this back down, put it down, and then ride again. So I wasn't riding with it the whole time. That would be kind of crazy actually to do that. And I didn't want to use a little GoPro camera either. I just didn't like the control or the quality. So I liked my choice in the end using this. Right, so on the day of filming, every 10 minutes I would stop and film, and I think just those little breaks would make it so I'm not riding too fast. And when I'm actually carrying this camera, I would also only be riding like maybe 5-10 kilometers an hour because I want to be able to control things, have a smoother shot. So I really ended up going, like my pace was like, I think 8 kilometers an hour, which is what, like 5 miles per hour-ish or 6? Or something like that. So it wasn't that fast at all, my pace, but I did it over 15 hours. That's how come I was able to cover like 120 kilometers, because it just took me so long to do it. And actually at the end of the bike ride, I found out I had a lot of energy left, which I was surprised at. I thought I was going to struggle at the very end, but I actually rode my fastest at the very end because, I had filmed everything, it was dark, so just time to get home. Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about was the bike rules. I tried to show some longer shots in the videos and specific shots in the videos, but I didn't want to get into the bike rules too much, even though it's a 35-minute video, because I wanted to make it relaxing. But also, it's I think you can make a whole video on bike rules. So if I'm going to do that one day, I'll just save it for that. But because this is the behind the scenes, I want to explain a little bit of what you are seeing. So you might have noticed that bikes can ride both on the streets as well as on the roads. And technically, they are considered a vehicle. So you are supposed to be on the road. However, there are exceptions, and that's why you see so many people on the sidewalks. So one exception is for seniors. They are allowed to ride on the sidewalks, and I believe kids under 13 are allowed to ride as well. But also, if you don't feel safe on the roads, then you're allowed to ride on the sidewalks. as well as if there are designated paths on the sidewalks or it's designated mixed use between pedestrians and cyclists. You can also ride on the sidewalks. So, but it's the one thing is that if you don't feel safe, you can ride on the sidewalks. I think that's the huge exception because, if you're like when I had my young kids in the back, I wouldn't want to ride on the street. I'd ride on a sidewalk. I've seen cops themselves plenty of times riding on sidewalks. But the rule is you are supposed to be going 10 kilometers an hour or slower, which is 6 miles, right? Is that the ratio? And you have to give the right of way to pedestrians. So you're not supposed to be cutting them off. That doesn't always happen, but if you've ever been on Japanese streets, but that's how our sidewalks, our streets, but that's how it works. So that's the reason why you'll see bikes like pretty much everywhere. Now around pedestrian stations, in some places you can't physically ride your bike. So there are times and places where I'd have to get off my bike and just walk it. So they have signs there, follow that. Helmets, that's probably another thing people will notice, is most people don't wear helmets. I believe it's a recommendation for kids who are younger, but there's no firm law as far as I know. Again, I'll have to research this a bit. And I think most Japanese people don't know the laws whatsoever about biking in Japan. The thing is, if I had a road bike, if I was going at high speeds, I would definitely wear a helmet. And you will see people with those road bikes, those race bikes. They're going fairly 30 kilometers an hour plus. They're wearing helmets, but I think the fastest I'm getting is like 20-ish kilometers an hour if I'm just riding normally, and if I had a camera in my hand, it'd be like 10 kilometers an hour. So I just wasn't really riding fast. And this is just a little tip for anybody who comes and wants to bike and they want to know about rentals. Well, they've really stepped up their programs, at least in Tokyo, where a lot of, at least 7-Elevens, they have rental bike stops. And so I believe you can go into 7-Eleven and get a pass. All right, so for my bike and camera setup, let's start off with my bike. So I actually had, this is not it, but I had a holder for my smartphone. And then I also had a holder for my water bottle. Now, I never had these before, so I had to buy them specifically for the trip, and I'm so glad I did because, just having your maps like right there with a nice smartphone holder, one that's easily adjustable, but still doesn't let my phone fall out, and one that lets me take my phone out really quickly, that was super helpful. And then what I did is I had a battery charger from my bag going into my smartphone, so it was always charged up. Yeah, I ran through 2 batteries like this. And what else? Oh, I had a soap and towel, and a couple towels actually, and sanitizer spray like this, and I had regular hand soap too, and that's because most bathrooms at the parks do not have soap. I had all these frozen gel packs that I had packed. I think I had 8 of them, and each one's at 180 calories, and I thought I'd be leaning on them heavily, but I happened to eat in the mall in Odaiba, and then my Japanese teacher brought me a sandwich as well when I went to visit her. So I actually didn't even crack one open. That really surprised me. For water, I had this water bottle, which was my main one. And then I had another one of this size. These are 500 mils, or 480 technically. And then I had another 1 liter bottle. So I would just keep those filled up at the parks and whatnot. Some people ask me why I used a mamachari, which is literally like mama's bike. But they're like the city bike or commuter bike that you most often see in Japan. They're the most popular type of bike. And the reason was because I wanted to have my film stuff in the back, but then I also had, my water bottles and those gel packs and spare battery and some other little items that I want to keep in the front. So now to talk about this camera. So the interesting thing is this is on a mode where no matter what I do, it shouldn't change unless I'm pressing buttons. And so there's actually a key lock on here. So yeah, I just put it on now. So now I can press buttons and nothing actually happens. Although this button still works. So you can use this button to readjust things, right? So if you hold that button and move it around, it'll move. But once you stop, it stays fixed, right? So that's generally how I would film, but there's another mode where if you want to flip it, see now this follows you left and right, but not up and down. Up and down, I still have to use this button to go up and down, or use these controls to go up and down. But now if I wanted to go, what did I do? Okay, go back. Okay, but if you're riding your bike and you want to flip it around 3 times, selfie mode. So that was a pretty cool to be able to do, and I liked the footage from that, so I was glad I tried that. Yeah. So that was it, and then I learned really quickly how to power off like that, and then kind of put my camera back in my bag so that I could film again really quickly. So that was really important, that I could just quickly, grab my camera out of the bag, start it up, okay, and boom, and start filming again, because I think I have 100 and something shots, maybe 110, 120 film shots. So if you're doing that over and over and over again, it's nice to have it easy to do. So this microphone, it has an adjustment where you can make it so it'll hear me from behind, and a mode where it actually only hears from the front. So usually I would only use it for the front, but because I maybe wanted to say some things while I'm riding the bike or while I'm just standing and filming, I use that mode. So that was very handy. And this is super lightweight, and fits right on top of the shoe over here. So with the gimbal usage, this mic is really, really nice. So the last thing I want to talk about is route planning. And that, I am so glad I did the route planning, but it had quite a bit of a learning curve to it. So over here on the map, I planned my route out, and you can see here that there's all these points, and I had to manually put each point down, but it's not the most intuitive to use. But once you get it figured out, it's not bad. So let's just pretend here that I want to plan a route out. So what I would have to do is I'd actually have to add a new layer, right? And then I'd have to pick a stop. So you have to pick points that already exist, I believe. You can't just pick a random point. So I have to pick some point, and then you can add it to your map, right? But then once it's added to your map, you have to go directions, right? But then it creates a new layer, so it's kind of weird. It's like a directions layer. So I'm going to delete the first layer I created. Now once you have this, I guess it's called driving. I'll switch it to walking, because cycling doesn't work in Japan for some reason. It's only walking routes. So I can pick, okay, let's be over here now. Oh no, I can't even do that. I have to put in the actual name. I still have to type in Koji Machi Post Office. Here we go. And there we go. Now we have point A, point B, and then if I want to add another destination, so let's see, I go from A to B, and I want to move this B, I can just move it over this way. So that's nice. But let's say I'm going to Tokyo Dome City. So add a destination. I actually have to type it in again. So Tokyo Dome City. Okay, there it is. So now the cool thing about it is that if I don't like the route, or I want to make adjustments, I can actually do that like this. So that's what I did to do my exact route. So I wanted to go along the river all the time, so I would drag A over here, and then B, I would go like this, and then this waypoint, I would, go again, and I'd plan it all out just exactly the way I wanted it. Now the problem is you can only get 10 points in between, 10 waypoints between each location, I believe. So you have to kind of figure out how to use it properly so you can get your max amount of data in here, because you only get 10 points as well, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. That's the max you can get, I believe. And then 10, I guess, subway points in between each of those ones. So there's only so big a route you can plan before you have to do another, I guess, layer. And there's only so many layers you can have. So it's a little bit more complicated to plan than you think. And this is in Google My Maps you create, which actually doesn't show up the same way in actual Google Maps. But you can you can't get step-by-step directions, I guess, in Google Maps. In Google Maps, it'll show you like this blue line when you're riding, but it won't show you like turn here, turn there. So I just look at my map and my GPS, and I can kind of follow along the blue line or diverge when I want to. This is my actual route that I took. So I think it has the most accurate data because it was using my GPS tracker. So I can see here that I went here and back a few times, and then I went back up here, then back down. So I think it has the most accurate data in terms of distance. And this one says I did it 120 kilometers. But when I looked at my Google Fit, I saw that I only did 100 kilometers. I was wondering why that's a pretty big discrepancy. That's like 20%. So I looked at my timeline, and then I saw that, oh, okay, so it's like I'm just flying in the sky here. This is like as the crow flies, kind of. It has certain like waypoints it has, and then yeah, so it's that's why it definitely is not accurate. So I would say that my tracking from my fitness tracker, which is Runkeeper, it actually has the most accurate data. And at any point in time, you can click on a point and see some details if you use a different app. So this is the app that I used. It's a GPX editor, and so if you click on a point over here, it'll tell you the distance, 9.4 kilometers out of 119.4, and so that was really easy to find out like how much distance I had done at any single point in the video. And then it would also tell me the time, although once I combined, because I had two routes that I had to combine together because my app stopped working. So once I did that, I got cut off because my camera hit the 30-minute limit. And so what I was trying to explain was that my app had actually shut down, and so I don't have the time data on here anymore, but I was able to pull out the time data of where I was at any single point, which I found was pretty interesting. And the other thing I could do with this map was I could use it in my After Effects software to create maps. So I'm not going to go into the After Effects program, but I will show you the result in Premiere. So you see that orange route that's going by, well, that's actually the real route that I took. So that is, and it was fairly easy to import. Like, learning how to do it all was a little bit of time, but once I know how to do it, it's actually quite easy to do. So that's pretty cool. So maybe I can use this kind of feature in the future for other videos. And I think that's about it. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments. I'll try my best to answer. I will link to some of the software, or like, you know, the map editing software that I used, so that you can use it as well. And I think I can give you a copy of the map also if you want to do certain portions of the route yourself. All right. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side. See ya.